Just one positive thought every morning can change your entire day. Happy Monday, everybody, and welcome to Africa Good Morning, where we bring you the news making headlines. My name is Aina Raiza Kweo, and alongside me is Tate Mberi.
Hey, Tate, look at that, getting some age and wisdom in one intro. Thank you very much, Aina. This is still Africa Good Morning, and today is Book Lovers Day. From the scent of a rare first edition book found in an old-time book collection to a crisp, fresh book at the local supermarket, the very sight of a book can bring back memories. Reading as a child, enjoying the short stories, the long books, and the ability to lose yourself in a story so powerful that at the end you're asking yourself where to get the next book in the series. This is for the reader in all of us as we celebrate Book Lovers Day. Do you have a favorite book, Aina?
I love Nervous Conditions.
That's my favorite. Yes, one of Nervous Conditions by Tisi Dangaremba. And here's something for the book lovers out there.
Welcome back to Africa Good Morning, and here are the news making headlines. Army not deployed to SABC Cape Town and Gqeberha offices. The SABC has confirmed that the SANDF has not been deployed to their Cape Town and Gqeberha offices. The public broadcaster said on Saturday that the deployment of the army followed the recent unrest in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. Meanwhile, SABC spokesperson Gugun Tuli has dismissed misleading and malicious allegations that there is an ulterior motive for the presence of the SANDF on its premises. Tuli added that as a national key point area delivering an essential service to the nation and considering the recent attacks on SABC journalists, it was deemed unnecessary that the physical premises and the employees working in these offices be protected. She said the deployment was at most of its key point premises around the country, including its headquarters in Auckland Park.
Our second story comes from Zimbabwe. Gumbura dies from COVID-19 in prison. Incarcerated leader of the RMG Independent End Time Message Church of Zimbabwe, Robert Martin Gumbura, has died. Gumbura died of COVID-19 related complications at Chikurubi Maximum Prison on Saturday. Confirming his death, Zimbabwe Prison and the Correctional Service said he died in the afternoon at the prison hospital. Gumbura was serving a 40-year jail term where he was convicted on 4 counts of rape and 1 account of illegally possessing pornographic material in 2014. He leaves behind 11 wives and 30 children.
In our next story, ANC warns Carl Niehaus over planning second phase of protest against Jacob Zuma jailing. The ANC has issued a stern warning against its own members who are allegedly planning to stage a second phase of protest against the government, urging law enforcement agencies to act. The warning comes after the former Umkhonto weSizwe military veterans member Carl Niehaus and former ANC Nelson Mandela Bay councillor Andile Lungisa were among a group of disgruntled party members who are threatening to campaign for the immediate release of former President Jacob Zuma and the implementation of radical economic transformation. The leaders of the Free Jacob Zuma campaign are also planning to lodge a genocide complaint against President Cyril Ramaphosa, his cabinet members, Speaker of Parliament Thandi Modise, and the NCOP head Amos Masondo. They also included Minister of Defense and and military veterans Nosiviwe Mampisa Kwakwala and various newly appointed top leadership of the South African National Defence Force.
Now in Zambia, Dr. Nevers Mumba says, I am not withdrawing. New Hope MMD presidential candidate Dr. Nevers Mumba has refuted social media rumors suggesting that he has been paid to jeopardize next week's polls. Dr. Mumba says the rumors are unfortunate, saying they are being peddled by his adversaries to create a false narrative of him. In a Facebook address, Dr. Mumba says he holds strong values and cannot betray the Zambian people under any circumstance. Dr. Mumba, who insists that he is contesting next week's poll, says it is disheartening that people are alleging that he has received huge amounts of money to change his mind. Meanwhile, Dr. Mumba has asked the church to remain focused and pray for the nation as the country heads to the polls.
In our next story, FIC red flags transitions worth nearly 14 billion. The Financial Intelligence Center of the Bank of Namibia yesterday reported that during the 2020 and 2021 financial year, it received 1,585 suspicious transaction reports and 177 questionable activities. The red-flagged dealings were reported from accountable and reporting institutions, internally generated reports, and members of the public. This signifies an increase of 35% of reports compared to the 2019-2020 financial year. The FIC noted that it disseminated a total of 435 intelligence disclosures to domestic and international stakeholders. Analyzed transactions were valued at 13.8 billion, some of which are still under investigation by law enforcement agencies and other competent authorities.
Now in Botswana, COVID-19 renders Masisi helpless, with Botswana turned into a global hotspot for COVID-19 pandemic driven by fast-spreading Delta variant. All eyes are on President Mokgweetsi Masisi to provide answers as the nation awaits vaccination while the death toll rises. Health facilities are stretched, and due to mounting pressure on government and Masisi himself, it is predicted that the COVID-19 situation poses a serious threat to the ruling Botswana Democratic Party BDP in the next elections. As the COVID-19 crisis explodes, government faces widespread criticism from across sections of the population, a move which observers say could harm Masisi and the BDP.
In our next story, outrage after Zimbabwean girl who was 14 years old dies giving birth at the church shrine. Police in Zimbabwe are investigating the death of the 14-year-old girl during childbirth, a case that sparked outrage among citizens and rights activists. Memory Machaya is reported to have died last month at the church shrine in the eastern region of Marange. The case has exposed the exploitation of minors as she was reportedly forced to abandon school to get married. The United Nations urged the government to recognize child marriage as a crime and bring an end to the practice. The organization said it notes with deep concern and condemns strongly reports into the circumstances surrounding her death.
Now in Ethiopia, Tigray fighters seized town hosting UNESCO World Heritage Site. Ethiopians reacted on Friday after Tigrayan fighters seized control of a town which hosts a UNESCO World Heritage Site in the country's Amhara region. A day earlier, the Tigrayan forces had entered Lalibela, which is known for its 900-year-old rock-hewn churches. In the capital Addis Ababa, residents expressed their concern about the spread of the ongoing conflict in the country's north into the Orthodox Christian pilgrimage site. The fighting first erupted in Tigray in November after a falling out between Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and the Tigray ruling party that had dominated Ethiopia's government for nearly 3 decades. Since then, thousands of people have been killed.
In our next story, lions killed 3 children near Tanzania Wildlife Reserve. 3 young children have been killed by lions near Tanzania's world-renowned Ngorongoro Wildlife Reserve as they went to look for lost cattle, according to the police. The youngsters, aged between 9 and 11, had arrived home from school and gone into the forest near the Ngorongoro Conservation Area to search for the missing animal, Arusha Police Chief Justice Maseyo said. That is when the lions attacked the 3 children while injuring one, he said. Ngorongoro in the northern Tanzania is a World Heritage Site that is home to wildlife, big cats, including lion, cheetahs, and leopards.
Now in Madagascar, 2 French men remanded in prison over failed assassination of president. The 2 Frenchmen arrested in Madagascar in an alleged coup plot, along with a Malagasy employee of the central bank, have been incarcerated in a high-security prison. After 15 days in police custody, Philippe F. and Paul R. were brought before a judge on Wednesday, who decided to detain them and charge them. We don't know the reason for this decision, explained Philippe F.'s French lawyer Etienne de Villepin. A total of 21 people were presented to an investigating judge during a lengthy hearing on Wednesday at the Antananarivo courthouse, 11 of whom were incarcerated in the process, said the government's communications agency, Taratra.
In our next story, Rwandan force deployed last month to help Mozambique's army battle jihadists said Sunday they had recaptured control of the key northern port of Mokimbao da Praia from the extremist militants. The port city of Mokimbao da Praia, a major stronghold of the insurgency for more than 2 years, has been captured by Rwandan and Mozambican security forces, the Rwandan Defense Force said in a tweet. Force spokesperson Colonel Ronald Ravinga confirmed this to the French AFP news agency, saying Mokimbao da Praia has fallen. The port town from where the first Islamist attacks were staged in October 2017 has since last year become the de facto headquarters of the Islamic State-linked extremists locally referred to as Al-Shabaab.
Now in the last of our top stories, deadly fighting erupts between rival factions of South Sudan VP Machar's party. Deadly fighting erupted on Saturday between rival factions of South Sudan Vice President Riek Machar's SPLA-IO, his military spokesman said in a statement. The clashes erupted after Machar's rivals declared this week they had deposed him as the head of the party and its military forces. Armed forces led by a rival general in the party, Simon Gatwech Duwal, had launched an attack on Machar's men who had repulsed the aggressors, the spokesman Colonel Lampo Gabriel said. Machar's SPLA-IO forces had killed 2 major generals and over 27 enemy soldiers, while they had lost 3 men, he added. Well, that brings us to the end of our first batch of stories. Africa Good Morning is absolutely committed to bringing you the news in the SADC region and beyond. We'll see you just after the break.
Welcome back to Africa Good Morning. The UN's World Food Programme says there has been no international response to its plea for aid for Madagascar, where starvation looms in a worsening famine. Truly saddening. And here's more on that.
The World Food Programme says there has been no response to an appeal it made for humanitarian help for people facing hunger in Madagascar. Last week, the UN issued a so-called flash appeal. The island country's agricultural season was ruined by the worst drought in a decade. Now, because of that drought, more than 1 million people in southern Madagascar will need food aid this year. Now, the pandemic has added to the hardship. The seasonal work that people often rely on has been affected by the lockdown.
A country desperate. Children malnourished. Parents trying but often failing to find food. My children didn't eat for 3 days and then died because their mother couldn't feed them. I know it was the famine that killed them. This is Madagascar's third consecutive year of drought. In the south, 1 in 3 people is facing life-threatening shortages of food and water. We're so poor that we have nothing to eat because of the drought. In desperate efforts to keep hunger at bay, many are now mixing white clay with tamarind fruit and eating it. If we had something proper to eat, we would never have eaten it. But we didn't know that white clay was edible before. We tried to mix it and it worked. The UN has launched an appeal for $76 million in emergency aid. The race to feed Madagascans has been made more complicated, though, because of the global pandemic.
We are trying to be out there urgently right now to save lives which are at risk. The COVID-19 situation has, of course, made everything much more difficult.
Without more help soon, this humanitarian crisis will only get worse.
For more on this, we've invited Jean-Luc Ziblot onto the program. He is the World Food Programme's country director for Madagascar. Welcome to the program, Mr. Ziblot. We've just heard that the hunger crisis in Madagascar is going to worsen if help doesn't arrive soon. How urgent is the situation, would you say?
The situation right today is very alarming for several reasons, because there has been an extreme drought for the past year, and there has been basically no rain except one single rain in December in all the south of Madagascar. The second reason is that the harvest in last year, which is taking place in April, May, was extremely poor. And therefore, the people have exhausted most of their stock.
So the UN's appealed for $76 million to address the crisis. Has that money come through?
No, this flash appeal, as it is called, has been launched together by the United Nations and the international community and the government of Madagascar. But so far, we didn't see any result at all.
What does that tell us, that there could be this crisis, all these people going hungry? We just saw in our report families resorting to eating clay and leaves to survive, and yet people aren't responding to this urgent appeal.
Let's say that this is quite a normal situation in terms of the length, the time length of the response to this kind of appeal. We just hope that this appeal will be heard by the international community, that it will be widely spread, and then some responses, positive responses, will come in the coming week and months. If it doesn't come in the sense that we are hoping, we think with WFP that unfortunately we will go from a very critical situation to a pre-famine situation if nothing urgent is done, in addition of what we are doing with some other partners already to alleviate the suffering of these people.
All right, that's Jean-Luc Ziblo from the World Food Programme in Madagascar. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now, Africa may not be a country, but we like to make sure that we emphasize on our interconnectedness with regards to news, making sure that everybody is informed from where they are about everything happening on the continent. With regards to that and keeping that in mind, we're going to have a chat with Mr. Mike Sichula in Zambia as he brings us the news on the ground. Good morning, Mr. Sichula.
Africa, good morning. I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing in the studios?
We are fantastic. It's always good to have you, sir. Now, in your first story, health authorities say highly densely populated cities are recording low positivity to the coronavirus pandemic, a sign of potentially containing the disease. Could you please tell us about this?
Yes, the Minister of Health yesterday did say that Lusaka province, Copperbelt, and the southern province, which are highly densely populated provinces, have in the past 7 days recorded a reduction in COVID positivity cases. So this to them shows that the efforts that have been put in place are going to actually contain the pandemic in the coming weeks. In terms of the national positivity rate, the Minister of Health had set a target of 5%. Currently, the positivity rate is around 6%. So, in terms of the recovery rate, we are over 98% in terms of recovery rate. So, this is a sign showing that the Minister of Health and indeed other sectors involved in the fight against the pandemic is yielding positive results, and it is likely going to reduce further in coming weeks. The Minister of Health also has received a number of coronavirus vaccines, the latest being the Sinopharm from China. 100,000 doses arrived in the country last week, and this has increased the basket of the vaccines that are in the country, and the health authorities are encouraging people to get vaccinated. The target of the health authorities to vaccinate about 70% of the national population.
All right, now, ballot papers and other election materials have been delivered to almost 156 constituencies in readiness for voting on Thursday this week. Please tell us more.
Yes, we have about 156 constituencies across the 10 provinces of Zambia, and so far, 9 of the provinces have received the ballot papers. Lusaka, which is the capital city, is receiving its share of the ballot boxes today, the 9th of August, with 4 days before the elections on Thursday. So what has been happening is that stakeholders from the political parties, civil society organizations, have been witnessing the arrival of ballot boxes. So once these ballot boxes reach the regional towns, it is the mandate of now the electoral officers in those regions to distribute the ballot papers to the respective polling stations. Zambia has over 12,000 polling stations across the country. So all these polling stations have to be provided with these voting materials by the 11th of August, because on the 12th there will be voting. So between now and the 11th of August, officers are making sure that these ballot papers, the voting booths, the ballot boxes and papers and everything that has to be involved in this process are delivered, such that on the 12th, by 6 o'clock in the morning, voting has to begin. So the task has almost been completed by the electoral body, and all stakeholders are happy with the process, even if there have been some hitches here of suspicions of ballot boxes missing and the like. But the general picture is that everything is set for Thursday for voting.
We certainly hope that this democratic process moves smoothly for Zambia. Now, speaking of Zambians who move smoothly, particularly on the football field, Mr. Patson Daka over the weekend made history by winning a Charity Shield medal with Leicester City in the season's opener of the English Premier League. The young boy already has one in the cabinet. What's the feeling around that?
The feeling amongst Zambian soccer fans is high, because they're saying this Patson Daka is proving to be a force to reckon with. He didn't start the match when Leicester City was playing Manchester City in the Charity Shield. He didn't start, but he came on as a sub in the 71st minute, and he proved to be fitting well in the team, such that he helped his team to win the Charity Shield. The goal that Leicester City scored was courtesy of the Nigerian, who also is a former player of Manchester City. So you can see him there, clad in the Zambian flag, representing the country very well. And a lot of people are excited because Patson Daka, he has become the first Zambian footballer to actually win a Charity Shield medal in the English Premier League. So it is history that is making, and everybody else is saying we are seeing a bright future for Patson in the English League. Then also some English fans are beginning to create, they want to create a special song for him, such that when he scores in the league, that song should be playing in the stadium. So it's exciting moments in England as well as in Zambia. It is exciting moments. Zambians are saying, now we believe Patson Daka is not going to be loaned out to other teams. He must cement his position in the team.
All right, it's very encouraging to see Patson win the Charity Shield and then brandishing the Zambian flag to remind you that charity begins at home. Thank you very much, Mike, for bringing us the news from Zambia.
Thank you very much, Africa. Good morning. Do have a pleasant week, and we'll certainly give our viewers on Africa Good Morning what will be happening in Zambia as voting begins on Thursday. Thank you.
Certainly looking forward to it, Mr. Sichula. This is Africa Good Morning. Now, to find out whether or not you're going to have a good day outside, check out our weather forecast.
top. If I got it and you want it and you'll never let it drop, all we gotta do is take our love to the top. I will ride for you, baby, even die for you. When I'm loving you, but my heart don't stop.
Now, in the next clip, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan is going to be talking about something we've all been wondering. There are new variants popping up. Are the vaccines that we have going to be strong enough? Do we need to wait for other vaccines? These are questions everyone is waiting. Should you get the vaccine now? Is it going to be able to attack this, or at least protect you from these new variants? Or perhaps are you waiting for what you may consider to be a more competent vaccine? There's only one way to find out, at a good place to get reliable information with regards to the COVID-19 pandemic, and that is WHO's Science in 5 up next.
Welcome to Science in 5, WHO's Conversations on Science. I'm Gabby Stern. We're continuing our conversation about vaccines. WHO's chief scientist, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, is here to talk to us about variants and how vaccines work with them. Welcome, Soumya.
Hello, Gabby.
So our first question is as follows. As new variants emerge, and as we learn more about how much protection the current batch of vaccines provide against them, people are wondering if they should wait till a more efficacious vaccine is available, or should they go ahead and get vaccinated now?
The good thing is there are lots of vaccines in development, but currently there are only a few that have completed clinical trials and that have had regulatory approval for use in countries. The good thing about all of these vaccines which have been approved is that they offer a lot of protection against severe disease, hospitalization, and death. And that's what we want. We want to reduce deaths. We want to prevent people from getting sick and going into hospital. We're still learning how effectively these vaccines protect against mild disease or asymptomatic infection. With the variants that are being described from different countries, people are asking these questions because there's some data coming showing that vaccines may be less effective in preventing against some of these variants. However, even in those countries, all of the vaccines that are approved still are very likely to protect against severe disease and hospitalization and death. So what's really important now is for people in countries who have been prioritized, who are in those risk groups, the health workers, the frontline workers, the elderly, and others who've been prioritized, must get their vaccines, because what we want is to prevent people from getting really ill or dying from COVID-19.
My second question is, what can we expect from the research and development pipeline for vaccines? What would future vaccines look like?
What's really amazing here is the amount of scientific and technological innovation that's happened in the short period of time. So while we have a few vaccines now that have been approved for use, what we are looking forward to is a next generation of vaccines that will be single dose, that can be stored at room temperature, that's safe for use in pregnant women, that's can be taken either through a nasal spray or even orally, and will provide long-lasting immunity. So there's all of these vaccines in development. With the news about the variants and the fact that some mutations in these variants seem to prevent the antibody binding to the virus as compared to the wild-type virus, what's also happening now is that vaccine manufacturers and developers are working on the next generation of vaccines using the same platform, but incorporating the new antigen, the new protein, which has this the mutations of interest that have been incorporated, so that the antibodies are now developed to this new form of the spike protein. WHO is working with regulators around the world, first of all, to try and determine when a vaccine change will be needed, and secondly, what clinical and immunological data the developers will need to provide in order for vaccines to be certified for wide use.
In some cities, serological studies have revealed that about half of the population has antibodies. Does this mean that these places, these cities, are approaching herd immunity? And should people relax the precautions in these places?
So WHO has been keeping track of these seroepidemiological studies, and at last count, there were almost 500. And if you take them all together, less than 10% of the world's population actually has antibodies to this virus. Of course, in some settings, like particularly in the very high density urban settlements, there are pockets where 50-60% of the population has been exposed to the virus and has antibodies. But that doesn't mean that the whole city or the whole province or the state or the country is now achieving herd immunity. The same individuals who are living in that community, the moment they go outside to a place where there is less of herd immunity, and if they don't have antibodies, they will then become susceptible. The only way of achieving herd immunity at that scale is through vaccination. And that's what we're focusing on now through COVAX, to get vaccines out to all countries, to vaccinate populations as soon as possible. Till that happens, we need to continue to take all the precautions that we've been advised to and that we've been doing for all these months. And this is along with the government taking all the actions that they have been taking in order to keep transmission down as low as possible.
Thank you, Soumya. If you found this information useful, please share it with your network. And until next time, please stay safe, stay healthy, and stick with science.
Welcome back to Africa. Good morning. It's time for us to get into your economic news stories for today. And in our first story, we are looking at aviation as Airlink to resume services to Nampula in Mozambique. South African private sector regional airline Airlink announced on Thursday that it would restart its direct service between Johannesburg and Nampula in Mozambique. The service would recommence on September 16. Bookings had already been reopened for the route, which had been suspended in March last year. Nampula is the third biggest city in Mozambique and capital of the province of the same name. It is located 194 kilometers inland of the port cities of Nacala and Mozambique.
In our next stories, consumers to feel the pinch of petrol price hike. Last week's petrol price hike, a record high, rubs salt in the wound of overburdened consumers and will probably add to food and transport prices, expert says. Motorists using petrol-pumped vehicles started paying 18 rand 20 cent a litre for 95 unleaded petrol from Wednesday, while 93 unleaded petrol increased by 91% a litre and diesel by 55.58. Wholesale illuminating paraffin went up by 50% a litre. This time a year ago, petrol cost 15 rand 17 cents a litre. The Department of Mineral Resources and Energy said the movement in international refined petroleum product prices followed the increased trend in crude oil prices.
Next up, we are talking about aviation again as Qatar Airways launches historic Harare-Lusaka route. One of the world's giant airlines, Qatar Airways, has launched its first flight to Harare and Lusaka, bringing connectivity and enhancing trade between the Southern Africa region and the Middle East. The 3 times a week Harare service will be operated by the airline's state-of-the-art Boeing 787 Dreamliner, featuring 22 seats in business class seats and 232 seats in economy class.
Zimbabwe SA car maker to debut in Namibian market. Zimbabwean-owned and South Africa-based car maker Mureza Prime 8 is set to launch in Namibian market next month. The car maker has so far released the first batch of units that are on the market in Zimbabwe and South Africa a fortnight ago. The Muzera, vernacular for flag in the Zimbabwean Shona language, is an idea capitalized by Tendai Mugofa, a Zimbabwean national based in South Africa, meant to create a vehicle that speaks to the different aspects of Africanism that borders around originality, durability, adaptability, while encompassing the very latest technology and model design scalability. Mureza Namibia Country Chief Executive Officer Lancent Lond Musesengwa says the launch in Namibia is part of the company's expansion plan that will also see the brand being traded in other countries in Southern Africa.
Colleague, are you planning on getting that car?
I should get this
Mureza
car.
Prime 8,
Yes.
African made. We'll have to see it. Those were our economic news stories. Up next, economic indicators. Now, if you are keeping up with the sports events this weekend, you know that Southern Africa rugby looks like a beautiful green and gold. But Ari Hochart has got a more comprehensive news package for you, so he's going to deliver that now. Good morning, Ari.
Yes, a very good morning, Ashwin. Yes, indeed. It's a good morning for Southern African or South Africa with the rugby. You're referring to the game that was played on Saturday, that is in Cape Town. That was the third and final test, the decider between the Springboks and the British and Irish Lions. Lots of tension in that series, and it was a tight game. The Springboks won it by 19 points to 16, and a great victory for South Africa. Only happens every 12 years, very unique. The Lions, British and Irish Lions, touring South Africa. In 4 years, they go to New Zealand again and then Australia. And but it will be remembered for all the off-the-field situations, I suppose. Rassie Erasmus, Director of Rugby of South Africa, he still needs to look World Rugby in the eye. That was after he made several comments and videos in the second week. Officiating was quite in the spotlight, but in the end, South Africa did win. Final score 19 points to 16. There's a triumphant team. And they travel to Port Elizabeth now. They're playing two tests. Cubata, they're playing there against Argentina. This coming Saturday, they're playing against Argentina, the first test, and then the second test, that is in the Four Nations Trophy. And they will also play against Australia and New Zealand, both those games abroad. So that was the rugby news, and on to some soccer news. News from transfer news, I can call it in a way. It's Lionel Messi has been playing for ages for Barcelona. Announced yesterday he was quite tearful about that he's not being his contract was not renewed, and there's a Paris Saint-Germain logo on this picture as well. There's a strong possibility. Seems like that's the only option for him at the moment, to go across to France and play for PSG. So Barcelona cannot afford Messi anymore. That was because of La Liga, the salary limits that La Liga brought into the system. He's meant to earn €123 per year at Barcelona. That's what he's been earning on his contract, and they could only offer him 50% of that. And seems like he will go across to PSG for around €75 million. So I'm sure that his cash flow will work out indeed. I think he will manage. He will be okay. And on to some cricket news. It was unfortunately rain that had the final say in the first test, the first 5-day test between India and England. That was played in England. And India was in a strong position. They only needed about 150 runs with 9 wickets left on the final day to win the test, but it was rained out. So it was a draw. England batted first, 183, and India made 278 in the second innings, and then England replied with 303 with Joe Root, 109, the best score, and India was 52 for 1 wicket when rain interrupted that game. The second test will start at Lord's, and that is going to be on this Thursday. Just quickly, also, Australia still playing in Bangladesh, a T20 series. Bangladesh won that series. They won the first 3 games. They went 3-0 up. Historic win for them in that series. And then Australia yesterday won the fourth T20 game. It was a tight finish again. 104 for 9 Bangladesh made in their innings. And then Australia made 105 for the loss of 7 wickets. They won by 3 wickets. The last and the fifth and final game will be played today. On to some tennis news, and we reported on Friday that South African Lloyd Harris did brilliantly in beating Rafael Nadal at the City Open in Washington. Unfortunately, he couldn't pull through. That is Lloyd Harris, the new talent of Southern African tennis. He's in the top 50 in the world rankings now, but he lost to Japan's Kei Nishikori, unfortunately, in the next round. And Kei Nishikori then lost to Mackenzie McDonald of the USA in 3 sets. But maybe more tennis news is that Roger Federer is in doubt to compete in the US Open. That is in a few weeks' time, and he withdrew from his last 2 tournaments. And he also just a few days ago celebrated his 40th birthday. So maybe the end is also closer for that illustrious career, Roger. Lastly, just let's finish off with some golf news. There was golf in the US PGA. There was the WCG FedEx St. Jude Classic. All the big names in world golf, most of them higher ranked players were playing in that tournament, and it got down to a playoff. It was Abraham Ancer of Mexico. He won in a playoff. He was on minus 16. He beat Hideki Matsuama and Sam Burns in a playoff. And the big names that fell off a little bit, there was very windy conditions, and Harris English, the leader, he finished with a 73. Bryson DeChambeau was up the leaderboard late in the round, but also fell away a few balls in the water and in the bushes. 74 for him his last round. And South African Louis Oosthuizen also played 4 over par 74 to finish on minus 7. And lastly, in the Hero Open, St Andrews on the European Tour, it was Grant Forrest that won that tournament minus 24. He's from Scotland. And then South African interest, it's Justin Walters. He was on minus 16. That's all the sports news. Lots happening all over the world. Hopefully your team or your individual performer did well. Have a great week. And at least there's a win for Southern Africa for the rugby. So a good day for South Africa on this Monday. We'll talk again on Friday and preview all the sport for the weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Ari. I must be honest, when I first read the Hero Open golf tournament, I thought we all got to vote about who our golf heroes were, and then they'll get on the tournament. So I was expecting to see Nick Price, even though he won a championship in 1994. But that's why we have Ari to tell us exactly what's happening in the sports world, so we're not misguided by our expectations. But you'll never be misguided by your expectation for news from the SADC region and beyond on Africa Good Morning, as we'll be bringing you your headlines after the break. Africa Good Morning has been streaming live from 7 a.m. And if you perhaps missed our top stories at the top of the hour, or you need a recap, worry not. Here are today's headlines. Army not deployed to SABC's Cape Town and Gqeberha offices. Gumbura dies from COVID-19 in prison. ANC warns Carl Niehaus over planning second phase of protest against Jacob Zuma's jailing. I am not withdrawing, Dr. Nevers Mumba. AfriLink to resume services to Nampula in Mozambique. In rugby, the Springboks won a dramatic final and deciding game against the British and Irish Lions in Cape Town on Saturday to clinch the series. Those have been our stories.
Thank you very much for joining us on Africa Good Morning. Remember to go to our website, OneUp2, to catch all of our content right here on NMH. We do look forward to hearing from you. Our email is agm_2centsworth@nmh.com.na. Please remember to sanitize, get vaccinated, and know that we can all beat COVID-19 together.
Absolutely. Until tomorrow, Swera Jakanaka.